Let's talk about well, I mean that last season, you're writing the season 20, and then things start changing on the fly as you're writing it, and yet you're
you can sort of tell watching it.
You're trapped to the story arc that you think is going to have this conclusion, and then all of a sudden we have a different president than we thought.
It started the season before that because we did a show where it was sort of about Trump when he was just sort of like throwing his name around as someone to get.
It was in the Republican primary,
and it was just basically like, okay, well, we should do this while it's happening before he goes away, and so we did our whole Trump show, and we thought, okay, well, we're done with that, and then, we go into this season, and it was just like, oh man, okay, this is still going on, so, and since we had made one of our characters basically Trump, we had to like keep servicing that, and we wanted him to be back and be a school teacher again, but unfortunately the American public wanted him to be president.
So when do you start writing that season? At that point, do you know that he's going to be the candidate?
We did. Oh yeah, we didn't start writing season 20 until August.
Oh, so
No, it was on by then. And like Trey said, we did actually one of our probably darkest and most like, I don't know, what would you call it? One of our darker episodes, about Trump basically in September 2015. And at the time we were a little like, you get caught with wanting to make fun of something that's actually happening. And then with that guy, like giving him the fucking pleasure of it, that you just don't want to do that. So eventually we just did it. And we did it in September 2015. And like Trey said, Garrison became our Trump. And we thought we could just kind of.
But that season was really like about the political correctness and all
that. Yeah.
Trump's like this side plot.
It was like a little side plot, but it trapped, like Trey said, it trapped us in this internal logic where Garrison was Trump. Yeah. And then we felt we had loyalty to that.
Yeah.
So then we showed up in August, and right by then, he was the candidate, and it was on. The conventions had already happened.
Yeah.
And so we started writing, and so we had been so that was happening, and we'd been kicking around this idea for a couple of years with Vernon Chapman and Bill Hader about doing something about a troll, internet troll, just then a guy. And the concept was a guy who's kind of like Tom Hanks, and then he goes downstairs and turns into a troll. Then he comes upstairs and he's Tom Hanks, and he goes down, he's like actually a good family man, but who is this guy? Like, why would you be so we had that idea, and then Trump came along. So we kind of we started talking about all these,
wait, hold on. Freeze that for a second. So the internet troll idea, how does that happen? Cause I've been lucky enough to be in that room. It's not many people.
No. And
so
that was just,
how do you get fixated on that and like, oh, we're going to blow that out and this is what we should do?
I mean, it was a while ago we started talking about trolling, I think. And it was really about like,
but it was also about just, in being a troll and like, in the sense of just being a provocateur. Yeah. And that's why we really like the idea of that, like this guy really took himself seriously as a troll in terms of an artist, and like, no, I'm actually doing something that's important for society and whatever. It's kind of like us, talking about ourselves and like, trying to justify what we do. And then that all sort of started relating to Trump too, because it was just like, and a few months ago we did some interviews where we said, we're just not going to make fun of, you can't make fun of Trump. Like it's its own he's doing his own comedy. There's like, we can't top his comedy. And people took it to mean, some people thought that we meant like, we're going to back off of him because of other reasons. But it really was just, whether it's a troll or us or Trump, it's pushing buttons and making people have this big reaction. There is some value to that. It is interesting, but I don't think as a president it's the best thing to have. I think it should be done by comedians, but that's sort of what we were kind of saying was kind of like leave the comedy to us, like you don't.
Yeah, we talked about the season sort of being why we're different than trolls, I think it was part of it was like watching the world change in a way when this is like everyone's talked about this. This is not an original thought, but that 2016 is the year the trolls came off the comment sections into the world, right?
Yeah.
And we felt that too at the time, and it was kind of important to us to say, well, what's different about what we do? Because there's a spectrum here of comedy and meanness and taking the piss out of people. And I think that Trey and I, it was interesting because Trey and I, we wanted to justify our existence but there's also, I see in a lot of internet culture and trolls, like there's something, I recognize a piece of myself in that. And I recognize a piece of
what piece?
The pushing buttons part, the part like Trey said, like part of comedy and part of especially where we started is flipping off the principle. You know, it's like just flipping or saying something that shouldn't be said. And then you can, you know, get yourself out of it. Like great comedy can do that, right?
Yeah.
Like I just watched the Dave Chappelle special last night on Netflix. He does that multiple times where he drives into like territory. You're like, oof. And you know, it's just pushing, he's using
Louis C.K.
provocation.
likes to do it too.
He's using provocation for an artistic like reason, right? And so we started season 20, like, well, we have to separate ourselves from that, but we also recognize that like there's a common thread here, which is like, you know, you don't want Trey and you don't want Cartman jumping out of frame in as much as Cartman represents some id portion of us. It's like, and that's funny. We can all laugh, but like that guy, you don't want that guy running for president or running or actually you're listening to him for news. Right. Or you're listening to him, you know, so it was a crazy, it was the first time last season was the first time I can say that I came in. I don't know what Trey, but kind of, but I mean, as we start talking, it was the first season I came in and I was like, pessimistic about the world. I think it was the first time. Yeah.
Even in August. Because in August, nobody thought Trump was going to win.
Yeah. And I got convinced of that too later, but I was so depressed about the whole rise and on what it said about our country and our country's political processes, even to get to that point seemed to me like, and I mean, there's a lot to talk about, unpack there, but just in general, it just depressed me. Like, oh shit, we may not make it. Like this fucking thing may just fall apart.
You guys kind of sound half demoralized about it.
It was
even now.
It was demoralizing. And I think part of it, you can watch if you watch the season, if you get that far, like season, and I think you just said show 7. I think that was the night of the election. And us, like everybody else, like we had a whole sweet show figured out with Hillary Clinton winning. And then we had to like at 8 p.m. LA time, we're like, holy shit, we have to go and we had to rip the whole thing apart, put the whole thing back together. And it wobbles. It's not
How much time did you have at that point?
6 hours.
With 12. I mean, by the time we worked to like, but I mean, to get everything in for animation, Trey's right. We just ripped it apart and just like did this thing. And it was hard.
To rip up half of it or 2/3 of it or how much was it?
2/3 of it.
Probably 2/3 of it or just keep scenes.
The night of.
No, the night of. Like 8. I'm sorry, we had the whole show done.
I read that and I never totally believed it. I always figured you had like back.
That's the thing. I mean, when I say it's a centralized schedule, it really is because we, you know, Tuesday for us, since the show airs on Wednesday, Tuesday is it's the day that everything gets finalized and not even, you know, on Monday, there's half a show. We don't know what the ending is. We don't know what the beginning, you know, there's, you know, people that watched the South Park on Monday night would be completely astounded of how little there is, you know, and how little we actually do on Tuesday is insane. And so we actually, and so it was Tuesday night of the election.
Yeah, but that was like Tuesday, like 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I think it was
about 8 or 9. We
8
started,
or 9, you knew.
8 or 9, we're like, and we were texting people on the East Coast who seemed like they knew, and we were like, fuck. And so
we had a bunch of, you know, first of all, we were saying, look, let's just be black for 30 minutes, you know, and just be like, that's kind of our statement. You know, it's just like, we messed up. We have nothing to say. Because what's so funny is that, you know, we'd been through so many election years with the show. We've been doing the show for 20 years. So we've been through, you know, a ton of elections, and we've done other election shows where we called who was going to win it. And it's very easy. All we would do is go to see what the Vegas odds were, right? Like Vegas knows.
We just bet with the majority.
Like, you know, and Vegas was giving, you know, with Obama, Vegas was giving, you know, 10 to 1 odds. We're like, okay, well, let's just do an Obama show. And with this too, they were giving Hillary, you know, 8 to, we're like, Vegas has 8 to 1. Come on, 8 to 1. We're good. You know?
It's true, but I have a math degree, and so I know why that's flawed. So.
Well, yeah, because you're trying to hedge both sides. My friend
because you just got to roll the dice. Just because you know, one of the times it'll come up the other,
right?
You know.
We had a parlay from August of the Pats winning the AFC East.
Oh, wow.
Parlayed with Hillary Clinton, which I was very proud of because I like when it's team, human beings, sports, real life.
Yeah.
And we had all these opportunities to go against it because, you know, after the grab him by the pussy, that whole disaster.
Yeah.
That was the day. He was like 8 to 1 underdog at that point for like a week.
I honestly,
and we were like, no, do we hedge? Nah, screw it. We don't
honestly,
have to.
I swear to you, the 2 best nights of sleep I've gotten in the last year were the night after the grab him by the pussy thing. So I was like, oh, good. I just went to bed.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah. And then after the second debate, I was like, oh, it was like, that was a different day, I think. And I was like, well, they're right around each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, so that's what I mean is like, I stressed out a bunch early and then I got complacent in the last like month. Because I mean, when we started, everybody did. When we started the season, it was very much like, well, we can't avoid this thing that's happening. You know, we got to put that front and center, Trump and that kind of stuff. But then by, like Trey said, we like everybody else. We're like, look at the odds, look at Vegas is saying, you know what I mean? So we just made a call. And you can feel that, that's what I'm saying. You can feel that that's where the season kind of, like something happened. And, you know, and then from then on, we never kind of we never quite got it back in order. And I think part of it is because just there are these like low-lying assumptions for comedy, because we have a lot of stuff going on. We started a lot of stuff in the season, like men versus women, J.J. Abrams and American decadence, and all these big themes. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, we were on the others. Maybe these are the opposite of what we thought, or you know what I mean? In the Hillary Clinton episode that we were going to air, I don't remember it, but it was pretty much like, okay, she wins, but shit still sucks because, you know what I mean? It's still not good just because that happened. So it was like, then what I'm saying is like, then I'm looking at myself that night going, well, this is way fucking worse. Like what, you know what I mean? And that's what I'm talking about that responsibility that we started feeling like what's different than where are we different than a troll, or where are we different than somebody, you know what I mean? Because what would the thing we were making fun of, even though I think we had already done our piece about Trump, it felt like, and we were trying to service that during the show, we were also making fun of something else that ended up losing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the election. And so then you're like, oh man, I sure like making fun of those people. You know what I mean? But now they lost in this election. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
The cousin of that is, and I still support SNL and I'm glad it exists. I hate that they've embraced celebrities to the point where if they're really killing somebody on the show, like whether it's celebrity or politician or whoever, like Sarah Palin's the best example of it, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just mocking her. But then it always gets to the point where
she comes on.
Yeah. And then it's like never the same after that.
No.
And I don't know how.
Well, and it's
that works
interesting,
with
you know, and
satire.
I think it's actually, I think they're doing better than ever because of it. But, you know, it's like now every week I'm seeing a headline about how SNL ripped on the Trump administration this week, you know, and they've become that show. They've become, and that was the part of the bummer for us about the season was we didn't want to make it a big Trump thing. And we kept thinking it was going to go away. And, we didn't want to get caught up in just being a political show, because there's plenty of good political comedy out there that we like to do. We like to dabble in that and do that one week, but then the next week we want to do fart jokes, you know, and whatever. And it's just like, we love to, like Matt was saying, you know, really change tones. And it's interesting because now people are really expecting us, you know, that, okay, well, let's see how you deal with Trump, you know, this coming season. And it's like, there was no other president where it's like, you know, no one ever said, oh, the new season's coming, how are you going to deal with Obama in this season?
Yeah.
You know, it was never, we're not that show, and we never were. It's just that somehow it's, and I think because SNL now is just becoming known for that, and that's what gets picked up every week.
It's hard. What do you do if you're them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was very, very glad.
What do you do if you're you?
Well, I'm glad that we are just doing
Fart
the Bill
jokes.
Simmons podcast today.
Right.
Like, we're not putting anything on the air right now.
Yeah.
And at the end of the last season, we needed to go. We were both like so exhausted and had nothing to say. We were just like, I don't know, like we got to go away. So I don't envy people that had to like through that kind of tumult, try to, you know, comedy people, when I know where their heads are at, try to go on and be funny. Like right now it'd be tough. I actually think it's hard. I think it's kind of comedy killing. See, like people come up to us all the time like, oh man, you got so much good material. And I'm like, I don't think it's that great of material.
It is the material. You can't, I mean, it's just hard. You can't
Right. It's just the material. You know what I mean?
Well,
He's taken a little something, which is like, that's like the button pushing.
Yeah.
It's like he takes that from you first, and then you can make fun of that, but it's like, well, fuck, I mean, what do? You know, you want to push the button. The comedian pushes the buttons. That's the natural order of things, you know.
It's like what he does with the handshakes.
Just pulls you through.
When he pulls handshake, he pulls the person toward him and they're off balance.
Yeah.
That's basically what he's done to comedians. But I would argue, like what you're saying before about how, like the professionals, sometimes you need the professionals over like all the amateurs. Like this is the time when we would need the professionals more than anybody to try to make sense of what's going on and put some humor into it.
But that's right. For us, that there is this thing of like, that's why we were trying at the end of the season to say, we're funny. That's the only difference really between us and trolls is like, because you got to be actually funny. And that just boils down to, that's just a skill. You have to, this is a totally, again, snobby. But we couldn't figure out what at the end of the day, what the other thing is. I mean, there's a difference between creating a box to see, to go up on stage with a mic on stage and do something than to perform it, right? In real life and think that like this is some Andy Kaufman, but like many times over, so like this is happening now with a few of those, like Hulk Hogan did it. Alex Jones did it the other day in a lawsuit where they're actually in lawsuits where they're being sued as people say, no, that's a character. Hulk Hogan is different than Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? And this starts this kind of, you can see this happening with everyone being a star and being their own, there's me and then there's real me. And it feels like we just recognize that the bit of it that's like the comedy provocateur and we've like luckily channeled it into this thing that hopefully isn't, bad or whatever. But you can see that happening where now it's like, that's what's hard about the comedy of it is because people are taking it and living it.
In the last 20 years, can you remember somebody who almost couldn't be parodied because he was a parody? Because I feel that way when I watch SNL. Everybody loves the Alec Baldwin things. To me, it's like I can't almost tell the difference between him and Trump.
No, and it's not. Yeah, that's
but
why.
not in a fun way. It's just like this is kind of what I'm watching anyway.
If you have like a little monkey and it's running himself into the wall over and over, and you're like, well, that's funny. But how am I going to make fun of the monkey running himself into the wall? I can discuss the monkey running himself into the wall. I can like copy the monkey running into the wall, but nothing's funnier than the monkey just running himself into the wall.
Or if I flip off the principal and the principal flips me off back, like that's really funny, but I don't know where to go from there. You know what I mean? I moon him and he moons me back. Like if he moons first, like, oh fuck, like that's not where you want, that guy shouldn't be the principal.
What were your options that night? So it's like Tuesday night, 8:00, and you have to blow up that election show. What was on the table that you didn't do?
Well, Go Black was what we talked about.
Did you think
about
airing
the show as is and just being like,
sorry?
Here it is. It's a document, for history. We talked about that. We called Doug Herzog and, he was at the Daily, we called him and said, Doug, with some version of like, we can't get the show done. It's just really screwed up and sorry. And he was like, I forget what he said exactly because he talked to Ann, but he said, I'm at the Daily Show. Everyone's crying. I'll call you back, or something like that. It was like, his world was like, everyone was coming to him saying, we can't do this tonight.
Well, that's another piece of this too, is you have to figure out what a funny alternative is, but everybody's like shell shocked.
Well, and then we had to show up Thursday morning and start another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No time to process.
Yeah. And we were going to do like a little under construction shot, like just a screen grab of just like, we're working on the show.
Yeah. Be back soon.
Like, we thought that would be funny. And
technical difficulties.
Yeah. But it was also just,
but
then it was like, we just got to the dry erase board and just started erasing shit and filling it and going, how can we line this all up to make it make sense? And we, I think by around 9:30 or 10, we kind of had it figured out sort of. That's like, okay, well, this would make sense. And, it was interesting what Doug said too, was that, and he wasn't even necessarily really he's like, I think he would have been okay with us just going black. But the thing that it was also, I think, nice for at least real diehard South Park fans to see that everything was still, everyone was so shell shocked by that. And it was like, you didn't want to see that the world had changed. You wanted to be like, okay, this horrible thing has happened and he's been elected president. South Park's still on the air. The sun's still rising. You know what I mean? Like water's still clear. Like you just wanted to like feel like things were going to be.
Yeah. Other people had to get up and go to work. It just was like how self-indulgent to be like, I don't know what to do. That felt like lame.